Welcome everyone to WIFF Off Script, Oscar 2022 edition. I'm Maria Cusimano. I am the data asset manager and member of the WIFF family, film enthusiast, and I'm here to introduce Vincent Georgie, Executive Director, Chief Programmer, and let's talk about some nominations.
Yeah, for sure.
So they were released today at 8 a.m. Let's get ahead of some of the front runners. Who's leading the pack right now?
Yeah, so the nomination leaders were Netflix's film The Power of the Dog, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, that got 12 nominations. Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, even though he was actually snubbed as Best Director, but we'll talk about that, got 10 nominations. And then Belfast, directed by Kenneth Branagh, and then Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, each got 7. So those are your majors. Other films that did pretty well this morning, King Richard with Will Smith got 6 nominations. A couple other films, Don't Look Up got a few. It was a good morning for a lot of films, for sure.
So what are the overperformers that we're looking at this year?
Yeah, for sure, you can't dodge The Power of the Dog getting 12 nominations. It got everything it was expected to, but when you're reading sort of through the nominations, you're looking for areas of strength or of weakness. And The Power of the Dog, for example, we expected it to get 3 acting nominations, but it actually got a 4th surprise acting nomination for Jesse Plemons in Best Supporting Actor. That shows the film's strength. It wasn't necessarily expected to get a production design nomination. It did. 12 is a very big haul for that film, and I know Netflix is deeply committed to getting that film over the line in Best Picture because they have never won Best Picture. For a streamer, that's a really big thing. So Power of the Dog did extremely well. It overperformed for sure. I think the films that underperformed or sort of probably weren't where they're at, believe it or not. One is actually West Side Story, even though it got 7 nominations, which is a solid amount. I think it's the opposite of The Power of the Dog. There's all sorts of categories that it could have added some extra nominations. It could have added a Best Actress nomination for Rachel Zegler. It could have added film editing. It could have added some screenplay. I didn't actually get a screenplay nomination. It just shows a little bit weaker than you would think. So I think that's notable in my view. The other overperformer, just thinking back of this morning, the real wow for a lot of people is the Japanese film Drive My Car, getting 4 nominations, including Best International Feature, but also Best Picture of the Year, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. That's incredible. And I'm really happy. I had a conversation this morning with that film's Canadian distributor, Films We Like, who we book a lot of films through here in Canada. In their whole history of their company, they have never had a Best Picture nominee. So they're really, really happy this morning. So that was, a tremendous morning for that film.
Terrific. But let's talk a little bit about the underperformers. I know you mentioned West Side Story, but I think a real story here is Ridley Scott's House of Gucci completely out of the conversation.
Yeah, it crashed and burned this morning. It only showed up in hair and makeup. People expected, it was predicted, to see Lady Gaga show up, quite possibly Jared Leto show up in supporting actor, maybe costumes as well. I know you and I have talked about this before. That film, I think, was a disaster. So I think it's a good thing that film didn't really show up here. But there were some expectations around it, but including for sure for Lady Gaga and for Jared Leto for them to show up. I think what became clear based on these nominations is that the only support within the Academy that House of Gucci had was really with the acting branch, if at all. It was clear they did not have support elsewhere, but ultimately that was not able to carry Lady Gaga or Jared Leto to nominations. But realistically, nor were they deserved. Lady Gaga was the best performance in it, but I don't know if that's saying much. Everybody in that film was, speaking with as if they're auditioning for like a Chef Boyardee commercial. It was just embarrassing. I don't know what film they were in. I also don't know what film Jared Leto was in. Jared Leto was also in a completely different film.
It felt like they were all doing a group project and no one had spoken until that exact moment they got on set. They were all doing different accents.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is I think Ridley Scott, he hitched his trailer to the wrong film that he made this year. There's big support behind, there's sort of a cult following that The Last Duel has formed online. So I think that's a very interesting misstep for him.
And at its core, it's also a much better film.
Absolutely.
Just full stop. It's just a much better film.
At least we got some really interesting Lady Gaga interviews where she was absolutely tap dancing for her life, just saying Patrizia sent bees after me, we got some really funny content there.
She was in it, don't get me wrong. And she put a lot of effort and care behind it. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a huge snub this morning not to see her nominated. I mean, including myself, I thought she would get into the top 5. But there's a clear message sent to that film. I mean, also some other films that underperformed or just showed a little bit of softness. A film I point to that is beloved by people called Coda. It's a wonderful film that was an American adaptation of the French film La Famille Bélier that we showed at WIFF back in 2015. It's a beloved film, but it only showed up 3 times. There would have been room for that to show up a bit more if they really loved it, and they sort of didn't. So that's a little bit soft. I thought Tick, Tick, Boom as well with Andrew Garfield was soft, including not getting into Best Picture. Some films like that, I'm like, oh, if you really loved it, it could have done more, and they sort of didn't give it that extra love.
There's also an interesting snub that we're seeing. Aaron Sorkin missing the screenplay category, and that's his bread and butter. I think he was definitely running on some nostalgia with being the Ricardos, and I think it shows. It didn't have the strength of his previous films.
It did not. I mean, everyone expected Nicole Kidman to get in for Best Actress, possibly Javier Bardem for Best Actor. He ended up getting nominated. No one's expected J.K. Simmons to get in for Supporting Actor, which was actually great. I think that he was actually part of that film's best performance. But everyone, including myself, sort of thought that Sorkin for writing was no problem, like that was going to happen. That being said, I thought Being the Ricardos was easily one of the most disappointing films of the whole year. I thought it was on the level of House of Gucci. For me, at least. I know on the extreme end, I thought Being the Ricardos was pretty bad.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think it really hit the notes that it was supposed to.
No.
But you know what? I think that kind of opens the door. Let's get talking about some of these Best Picture nominees.
Yeah. So Best Picture we've got Belfast, the Kenneth Branagh film, Coda, Drive My Car, Don't Look Up, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. So those. So
right off the top, what are some surprises that we're seeing here, and what are some of the things that we've expected?
Definitely the surprise inclusion is actually Nightmare Alley. That was not expected. That was considered quite an underperformer. That was Guillermo del Toro's film. It only received some other support in some of the technical categories. That's a surprise to see it show up here. Considering, for example, say back to the Being the Ricardos example, that film got 3 acting nominations. Usually that level of support, you'd see it show up in Best Picture, and it didn't. So that's a surprise. And also Drive My Car, and their campaign for that terrific Japanese film was very much based on the idea of, well, Parasite was nominated and won in Best Picture, we can do it too. But those films are not comparable at all. Parasite was actually a part of the mainstream pop culture. It broke out as a movement. Drive My Car is not that type of, it's an excellent film, but Drive My Car is not that type of film. So the fact that it did get in here is really actually quite tremendous. I think that's the real sort of wow in here that Drive My Car got in, and sort of the surprise. I assume here Nightmare Alley probably took the spot that most thought Tick, Tick, Boom would get. Otherwise, the rest of these is pretty much as expected. How about yourself?
I think Drive My Car, it's a testament to its quality and its technical ability on a dramatic level that it was able to break into Best Picture. And I think it does also speak to the fact that international films are now breaking more into the mainstream. However, I don't think it's quite the cultural moment of Parasite. I think it's quite an achievement to be included. I agree with you. Nightmare Alley, I was not expecting. To be perfectly honest, it's a lot of what I was expecting. What was a film that you were surprised that didn't quite hit, or a film that you were surprised you liked so much?
Out of these nominees?
Of these nominees,
I personally liked King Richard a lot. I thought that played really well. I think it's a well-told, pretty traditional story. I just think it's very good at what it's doing, specifically in the performances. I would say audiences and fans like Belfast more than I do. I thought Belfast was fine. But people really like and really respond to it. For me, and I knew it would get nominated. I don't know that it's quite at the level that most people seem to love it at, which is okay. But King Richard, I think, is great. Look, The Power of the Dog, again with 12 nominations, is huge. But I think the thing that's going to be considered with Power of the Dog is, I think it's a film. It's very high quality, but I don't know how much people love it as opposed to admire it. And I think that's going to be interesting when it comes time to voting.
I agree completely. I think it is one of the films that's easiest to access in that when you open your Netflix,
It's there.
it is right there, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's accessible in
Yep.
that
Yep.
dramatically, I don't think most people are going to watch it and be like, man, Bronco Henry.
Yeah. It's the only piece when looking at these nominees, usually you want to be, from a marketing perspective, you want to be the orange in the bag of apples. And when I look at it, you have a lot of films that do pull at the heartstrings. Belfast does, Coda definitely does, King Richard definitely does, even West Side Story does. Oddly, The Power of the Dog stands out more because it's a true art house film.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder a little bit about, or I mean, right now it's difficult to not view The Power of the Dog as being the front runner. I think that's where, if I was betting today, that's what I think is winning. But again, I think it's a film that people admire more than they love.
Okay, let's take a little pivot and let's talk about international features, which are really a bread and butter of WIFF's programming.
This category is incredible. Drive My Car, as we've talked about before. Flee, which is enormous. So this is a film that has set a record here. So Flee is a Danish animated documentary, and it has been nominated in International Feature, Documentary, and Animated Film. It's incredible. It's a wonderful film. That's nominated. That's a really good choice. Hand of God, the Italian film that's on Netflix from the director of The Great Beauty, who won that this Oscars category back in 2013. It's a good film. The surprise of the category for sure is Lunana, a Yak in the Classroom from Bhutan. Bhutan has never received an Oscar nomination as a country before. It's their first time, and that's great. And then the really terrific Norwegian film, The Worst Person in the World. I was really happy to see that happen here. And it also shows up actually in original screenplay. And that's one of the things, ultimately, more than any of the changes I've seen in the Academy the past few years, what I've been so delighted by this morning in particular is seeing non-North American films nominated in all categories. Because why would you ever assume the best films in the world are all coming from one country? Of course, they're coming from around the world. So seeing, and this slate of films is absolutely excellent. Like, this is a stellar group. It's impossible not to imagine Drive My Car as being the front runner. Mm-hmm. I think that's now very clear that's a front runner in this category. It's unlikely to take Best Picture, but this is a lovely slate of films, no question.
Absolutely. One notable absence is Asghar Farhadi's film A Hero, which he has previously won the Oscar in this category twice for A Separation and The Salesman, both films that have screened at WIFF.
Exactly. That's the obvious huge missing link in this, is not seeing that film here. Amazon had that film, so it's been widely available to people. People have seen it and won the Grand Prix at Cannes. That's a huge absence in this category. The only thing I could really chalk that up to realistically is I think people are very aware out of this voting branch that his last two films actually won. Mm-hmm. There might have been a little bit of spread the wealth. That being said, was it one of the 5 best foreign films of the year? Absolutely it was.
Oh, completely. Moving on to Best Documentary Feature, we have 5 nominees that are very strong.
Yep. So Ascension, Attica, Flee, Summer of Soul, and Writing with Fire. Summer of Soul was a huge hit when it world premiered at Sundance last year. That's, I think, clearly the front runner of this category. The music in the film and the editing in the film is just really tremendous. I think people really love that film. Writing with Fire is a film, actually part of my weekly recommendations a few weeks ago. It's a really lovely film that I really encourage people to check out. I think that people will actually fall in love with that film. Flee, as we've talked about already, it's got 3 nominations. I do wonder if this might be the category where they want to give Flee something. Flee having 3 nominations, they're going to want to figure out where it goes. I don't see it happening in foreign film with Drive My Car there. I'm not sure about animation. I would wonder if this is the category that their campaign will need to direct voters to please vote first actually over here. Because otherwise you'll split your vote in all 3 categories and not win any of them.
Completely. There is one snub in here, which is actually The Rescue, which it misses the category completely. The filmmakers previously, their last film, Free Solo, won this category, and it was also a huge hit at WIFF. It was a big fan favorite.
Yeah, it was beloved. And those filmmakers, that film is a National Geographic film. It's on Disney Plus right now. That's a real snub. And I mean, when I use the term snub, I don't use that lightly. Just because something's not nominated doesn't mean it's a snub. But something of the caliber and the profile of The Rescue really is a snub. The only thing I can really chalk it up to, the documentary branch, and I've met with that branch many times over the years, It's a branch that the minute you're successful on a project, they tend to want to move on and nominate other filmmakers. Even if your next film is spectacular, they tend to, the minute you're successful, they almost want to shy away from you. But The Rescue should have been, it was one of the top 5 documentaries. It was, in my view.
Completely. All right, actor in a leading role.
Yeah, so nominees are Javier Bardem for Being the Ricardos, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog, Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom, Will Smith for King Richard, and Denzel Washington receiving his 10th nomination of his career. Just incredible for The Tragedy of Macbeth.
Who do you think is the front runner in this category?
I would say Will Smith. I think Will Smith's been the front runner of this category since that film premiered back at, it was Telluride. I really do. However, I don't think this is locked down at all. I think there's actually a real 3-person race here between Benedict Cumberbatch, Andrew Garfield, and Will Smith. I think it's up for the taking. I think this could move around. The people that love Tick, Tick, Boom love Andrew Garfield in it. And if you're going to honor that film, it's clearly going to be in this category. Benedict Cumberbatch is highly respected. He's in the film's nomination leader, or the nomination leader for the whole year, actually. Denzel Washington and Javier Bardem, there's no chance. But the other 3 men, all 3 have a shot at this. Absolutely. That could go right today, Will Smith, but that's not guaranteed. I think the other 2 are highly competitive, actually.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What about Best Actress?
Best Actress, terrific category. Really, really, really stacked. Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter, Penelope Cruz with her 4th nomination for Parallel Mothers, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos, and Kristen Stewart for Spencer. This, like Best Actor, I'd actually say is completely wide open. You could make a case for all 5. I think whoever wins this category will win with less than 30% of the vote. You can really, this will absolutely come down to momentum and campaigning. There's clear advantages and detractors to all these titles. Off the top of my head, I would never underestimate Olivia Colman.
Absolutely. 4 nominations in 3 years.
Yeah. Like I sort of look at her as 3 nominations in 4 years. It's
yes. Sorry. I had it reversed.
Plus The Crown, plus, I mean, everything else she does. I would look at that. Jessica Chastain has a lot of respect in the industry. This is only her 3rd nomination. That being said, that film is not widely supported in nominations. There's a little bit of weakness there. Penelope Cruz, excellent performance. Everyone considers it her best in Parallel Mothers. Nicole Kidman, everybody I think would be fine with her winning her 2nd Oscar after she won for The Hours. It's divisive on how good people think she is as Lucille Ball. That's a bit of a debate. Kristen Stewart for Spencer, there was real talk, that she actually wouldn't even get nominated. And again, it's one of those things that's always important to tune out social media. If you listen to Twitter all year long, Kristen Stewart had already won. And you always remember, film Twitter is not the real world. It's a bit of a video game. The only one I really think is an uphill battle, I just don't see Kristen Stewart getting in there. It's the film's only nomination. I just don't think people like that film. I just don't. I
liked her performance. I feel like everyone in the film was a little bit just there to revolve around her. It didn't feel like a complete film. It felt more like a monologue.
I think it's a great point. But as far as the other 4, any of those 4 could take it. And Kristen Stewart with a huge campaign, maybe, but the other 4, absolutely. So this is wide open. That'll move around. Right today, if I was a betting man, Olivia Colman. But I'm not certain on that.
She's tremendous in that film.
Yeah.
Moving on, what about Best Supporting Actor?
Yeah, really terrific slate of nominees in this category. So you've got Ciarán Hinds from Belfast, Troy Kotsur, the dad from Coda, Jesse Plemons from The Power of the Dog, J.K. Simmons, a surprise nomination as Fred from Being the Ricardos, and Cody Smith-McPhee also from The Power of the Dog. In my view, this is actually the acting category that's the most solid in my mind. I can't imagine Cody Smith-McPhee not winning for The Power of the Dog. All the precursors have gone in his direction. It's a really strong performance. And you always wonder in terms of vote splitting, and the way vote splitting works and doesn't work when you have 2 nominees from the same film. When there's one nominee that clearly has a much larger role or a much more impactful role, it's not a problem to split the votes. If you think of Catherine Zeta-Jones versus Queen Latifah in Chicago, that was not a problem. But when you get into other cases where you got 2 nominees from the same film of similar roles, they split and they both lose. But in this case, Cody Smith-McPhee's performance is towering over Jesse Plemons. I don't think there's a vote splitting issue at all. Ciarán Hinds, I think, is great. I think he's a great actor. It's just a good nomination. J.K. Simmons as well. But this one, I just don't see it not being Cody Smith-McPhee. I think that one's quite easy. Troy Kotsur, the only one really in second place. But again, Coda is a terrific film. People love it, but it didn't blast through the nominations. So I don't know that there's movement there. I think this is Cody Smith-McPhee all the way.
Agreed. He gave a great performance.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Best Supporting Actress.
Sure. So those nominations, a couple of surprises in this category for sure. So in this category, Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter, that was a surprise and a really good inclusion. Ariana DeBose, no surprise at all for West Side Story. Judi Dench from Belfast, Kirsten Dunst from The Power of the Dog, and Ingenue Ellis from King Richard. It's a good slate. What this category told me is the Academy makes up its own mind, regardless of what SAG or Golden Globes or others do. That was pretty clear. Judi Dench showing up instead of her co-star Katrina Balfe, who'd been nominated for so many other awards this year for Belfast. That was definitely a surprise. Jessie Buckley getting in, I think is Jessie Buckley getting in for The Lost Daughter tells me people watched The Lost Daughter.
Absolutely, because it's very easy just to see Olivia Colman and say that's done. But Jessie Buckley was tremendous in that film. Right. I think she's really going to have a breakout year.
Oh, I think so too, and she's terrific. And she was also in a great film we showed it with a couple of years ago at the anniversary year called Wild Rose. She was really, really terrific in that film.
Phenomenal.
But her getting nominated here shows me they're watching that film. The front runner for sure is Ariana DeBose. That's an Oscar-winning role previously played by Rita Moreno. The thing I would wonder, and it's just wonder, out of all of this, Kirsten Dunst, it's her first nomination. She's been at this 28 years. Kirsten Dunst has worked with a lot of people. Ariana DeBose, this is her first movie. Don't lose sight of that. Kirsten Dunst, over 28 years as a young woman, has worked with a lot of voters. And I just think there needs to be an eye kept on that. It's a good performance. I think Ariana DeBose is actually better. But for me, the two key standout performances out of my own personal taste, Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter, and definitely Ingenue Ellis from King Richard. I thought those two performances were absolutely fantastic.
Ingenue Ellis was tremendous. And I think it's really great for her that she's getting that recognition because for a very long time, she was a television actress. And she had two real big roles in 2020 where she was nominated for Emmys. And I'm really excited to see her move into getting recognition for her film work as well.
She's terrific, absolutely terrific. Funny enough, the whole time I was watching King Richard, as much as Will Smith was great, I kept focusing in on her. She really made that film work for me. She was great.
Absolutely. Now to Best Director, a very interesting category.
Yeah. So nominees, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Kenneth Branagh for Belfast, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, Ryosuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, the great Japanese director, and Steven Spielberg for West Side Story. A couple of pieces of note here. This is a bit of a rematch from 1993 when Jane Campion and Steven Spielberg were nominated together. At that point, she was up for The Piano and him for Schindler's List, which he won for. In this rematching, there is no question this category is easy to call. Jane Campion is winning the Best Director Oscar. The momentum is there. The industry wants to see it. It'll be incredible. It's a great directorial job in this film. It's also significant, too, that I think it's sad that this is a stat, but it's a real stat. We've never before had 2 years back-to-back at the Oscars where women directors were nominated. Last year, we had Chloe Zhao and Emerald Fennell both nominated. But Chloe Zhao won last year, and this year we'll have Jane Campion, and that's terrific. But bottom line is the momentum's been Jane Campion, no question. The other part I would point out, Paul Thomas Anderson's had 8 nominations up to this point, plus the ones from today. We're going to want to see him honored. I fully expect love to show up for Paul Thomas Anderson in the original screenplay category. They're going to want to get him an Oscar finally, and they're going to do it in the writing category, not in directing.
Absolutely. So just in general now, the Oscars, they're a little bit earlier than they were last year. What can we expect from the presentation this year? Because last year's was a little bit of an anomaly. We're not exactly sure who that ceremony was for.
Yeah. I mean, last year's ceremony was a catastrophe. I mean, the whole time you're watching, like who would ever want to watch this? Let's make sure we have an episode where there are no clips of anything and everyone's sitting looking like they're at a really unpleasant meeting and then everyone's like virtue signaling from the stage. Like no one wants to watch this. This case, I think, is quite different. The plans are for it to go back to a much more traditional ceremony. They are bringing in a host or hostess. That'll be pretty exciting. They haven't announced who that is yet, but I think that will add something. I think last year was so bad and so criticized, rightfully so, that there's a lot of sort of, these are the things that we're definitely bringing back. These are the things that we're never doing again. I think that really matters. And the ceremony is actually, it's over a month away. It's on Sunday, March 27th. There's lots of time there. It'll be interesting to see too, as the campaigns evolve. There's a lot of time to campaign, so things can move around. Again, momentum always matters in these types of things. But I think the industry is looking forward to this ceremony happening in person. I think it'll be really quite exciting. I really do. And again, it's a really great breadth of nominations. And when you've got films, we've not talked a lot about it this morning or this afternoon, but like you've got Dune, which is a major hit that got 10 nominations. King Richard was a hit. Don't Look Up is an enormous hit online. You've got major films and major talent in major categories. And that, I think, will make for it to be a pretty exciting telecast for people.
Absolutely. And with the hybrid release schedule, how is that going to affect campaigns? And I guess in another way, how is that going to affect the future of cinema moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the hybrid release schedule, so the whole idea of putting films in movie theaters, but also on streaming shortly after or at the same time, as we call day and date, it's moved things around. I think what it's done, any of your streaming films, your Don't Look Up, your The Lost Daughter, Being of the Ricardos, the bottom line was they're accessible. People can get to them. So those people have seen those films. That's not a concern. That's an advantage. I think a film like, say, King Richard had an advantage of getting, some decent box office, but also having huge streaming numbers. Whereas a film like West Side Story was framed badly because it had no streaming numbers. It was only released theatrically, and its numbers weren't huge because of the pandemic. So then it was optically viewed as not being successful. And that's an optic I think they're going to have trouble shaking in their campaign. I really, really do. Even though it's an unfair optic, it's still an optic.
I think it was definitely a misstep. I know that they wanted to get people in there for Christmas. You have people on break, you want to see it, but they couldn't predict that the Omicron outbreak. I mean, I know as I was in bed with Omicron on Christmas, I would have loved to lay there and watch West Side Story, but it wasn't in the cards for us.
It was not. It was not.
Another interesting thing really quickly, last year with the pandemic shutting everything down, we got to see a lot of smaller filmmakers come up and get recognition. But it seems this year we're seeing more return to normal with the big productions moving back. Are we ever going to see that again?
Yeah, I think we will because the streamers are acquiring so much content that I absolutely do think there's an opportunity there. I mean, any year, I'll bring it back to all of these international films getting nominations in broad categories. That shows that people are making the effort to take a look at a variety of film and a variety of films of different sizes. I mean, the fact that Drive My Car is nominated as Best Picture of the Year gives hope for all of it, just in terms of that you can have a really high quality, very small film and get in and be recognized. I think it shows huge opportunity on that front. I think the Academy ultimately, nomination-wise, has done very well this morning. It really
terrific. Has. I agree. And we have a special announcement about exciting things upcoming.
We do. So there's nothing that WIFF loves more than spending time with its audience. So we have a surprise weekend of films back at the Capitol Theater for you from March 3rd to 5th. So 3 full days. And what do we have for you? We've had these lined up for a while, and we did well in the nominations this morning, so we wanted to share it today. That we will be bringing you the nominated films Drive My Car, Flee, Parallel Mothers, and The Worst Person in the World, which combined received 11 Oscar nominations this morning. WIFF has all these films for you. They'll be at the Capitol Theater here in Windsor from Thursday, March the 3rd through to Saturday, March the 5th. Multiple screenings of each. Tickets are on sale right now at windsorfilmfestival.com. Those tickets will all be available for you for those 4 tremendous films that combined got 11 Oscar nominations. Also important for you to know in terms of COVID protocols and safety, right now, based on current restrictions, we'll be selling only 50% of theater right now. And if those parameters to open up as we're expecting them to, we'll make more tickets available. But right now, we'll be seating the theater at a 50% capacity with obeying all COVID restrictions and protocols as they are right now. But tickets are on sale right now, and these are four really tremendous films. You know, Flea's absolutely incredible. Drive My Car is now this breakout hit. Parallel Mothers, one of Pedro Almodovar's best, and Penelope Cruz is nominated. And that Norwegian film, The Worst Person in the World, is really something else. It's a really great one. Is there one in there, Maria, that you love more than others?
I personally love Worst Person in the World. It really spoke to me, and I think it'll speak to a lot of people in the same age group as me, as millennials. It's a really tremendous film.
It is. All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us, everybody. Maria, thank you very much for hosting. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you,
All right.
Vincent. All
All right.
right.
See you at the movies.
See you at the movies.